Welcome TCB faithful to yet another episode of the Runback, the series where for $500 you can pretty much do whatever you want. You can even watch this video. And as always, we're here to ask the question, was this game actually any good? This time by hoping those lemon stealing whores don't steal any of our lemons.
Imagine, we can make lemonade, key lemon pie, lemon meringue pie.
I think it's the most valuable property that we have.
You know, I'll quote that and I don't even know where it's from. Hold on a sec. Don't look it up.
Speaking of porn, you think there wouldn't be much crossover between that and fighting games, but between the time of 1992 to 1996, you actually had a surprising handful of titles trying to cash in on both trends. This, surprisingly or not, brings us back to our favorite genre trope, the Thoughts and Tots, or more professionally known as the all-female fighter.
Throughout the history of our channel, we've covered a good amount of these games. Hell, the first episode of the Runback was a Thoughts and Tots with a Akana Heart. We would later go on to cover others such as the highly influential Asuka 120%, which pioneered a core identity for what would later be considered the anime fighter subgenre. And while today's topic isn't as impactful on the genre as large as Asuka, it could be considered the mother of the trope itself. It's time we talk about the Variable Geo games.
To be more accurate, the advanced line of the series. Let's not sugar the perpetual electric eye on YouTube now.
Yeah, God forbid a channel aimed at older audiences talk about adult subjects without some pushback, right?
We'll keep it clean, but it's more important to talk about what the series was before the two advanced games. So it's the early 90s, you should probably get the setup by now. Following the massive mainstream explosion of Street Fighter II in 1991, independent Japanese developers scrambled to apply fighting game mechanics to the burgeoning adult PC market, RetroGaming, resulting in early trendsetters like 1992's Ninyo Sakai, or Metal and Lace, quickly followed by probably the most generally well-known title in this theme, the Street Fighter games, specifically 1993's Street Fighter II on the PC Engine CD-ROM, which took the blatant bootleg energy of the era and cranked up the adult pinup rewards to 11. But while those games were mostly cheap cash-ins or softcore novelties, July of that same year changed the game entirely when a developer named Giga released the original Variable Geo on the PC 98.
Now, before they birthed this legendary all-female franchise, Giga operated as an adult game brand under Technical Group Laboratory, or TGL, a company that previously spent its time building standard computer software, strategy games, and traditional role-playing games before diving headfirst into the lucrative role game market.
But when they did, oh boy, while not something that would outsell SF2 by any means, the game certainly punched well above its weight in the conversation about sales numbers. The original Variable Geo turned out to be a massive hit in underground circles. It was so overwhelming that it single-handedly transformed Giga and TGL from a minor software house into a powerhouse franchise factory.
But I don't get what the hype is all about. Surely they're just showing some teddy, right? I've seen anime where they get all worked up over just panties, so it can't possibly be that. Oh my god!
Yup, a lot more to some standard titty, isn't it? Upon being defeated, instead of just a standard game over or character select screen, the game displays static, highly detailed PC-98 eroge artwork illustrating the defeated fighter being humiliated or assaulted.
I mean, I'm no prude, but I'm honestly nowhere near degenerate enough to find that entertaining even in the slightest. Those poor girls. Someone should call their mothers. Wait, I know how Japan gets its freak going. These are adults, right?
Technically, yes. Morally, let's move on.
Wait, so how did the advanced games turn out so normal? Comparatively speaking, of course.
Of course. Well, it's certainly not because they suddenly respected women.
So what? Marketing?
Marketing. The original games were built for Japanese home computers like the PC-98 to tap into the massive mainstream audience playing on home consoles like the TurboGrafx CD, Super Famicom, Sega Saturn, and PlayStation. TGL needed games that could pass the strict console manufacturer content guidelines.
Consoles of that era, especially Nintendo and Sony, had strict policies against explicit adult content. To bring Variable Geo to mainstream hardware, the software had to be completely overhauled, stripping out or toning down the notorious humiliation artwork.
Exactly, and that censorship hurdle is what ultimately forced them to pivot. Stripped of its explicit visual novel pattern, the developers actually had to lean into what was underneath the sleeves. A surprisingly ambitious, fast-paced 2D fighter.
Which brings us to 1994's Advanced Variable Geo, or AVG1 for short. Released first on Japanese computers before hitting other platforms, this was the moment the franchise grew up. Well, at least learned to put some clothes on. So let's get into the guts of all that. I know, it sounded better in the script.
The Runback.
Hey, hold on to your seats.
In a completely unpredictable twist to events, the original Variable Geo was not a very good fighting game. It suffered from stiff, clunky controls and primitive system designs. As with most games like this one that wanted to adult, the gameplay came to a distant second to its actual bread and butter, showing off its naked females.
Well, yeah, I wish that's all they were doing. Jesus. Anyway, like was said in the intro, Advanced VG serves as a port to the original Variable Geo, just toned down to meet the censorship requirements consoles brought in. Also in order to expand the reach of the series beyond 1990s basements. Kinda. See, Advance released on pretty much every major console between 1994 and 1997, with the PlayStation and Sega Saturn versions being viewed as the definitive editions of the game, as they were rebuilt from the ground up with improved gameplay and graphics. So I guess they can be viewed more as a reimagining of the original game. Alright, so I've been dying to ask, how does any of this waitress crap tie into the actual story of the game?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, the original Variable Geo was based around this bizarre and admittedly high concept premise. So it's a fighting game tournament.
But you said
Hold on. It's a fighting game tournament between family restaurant waitresses.
Fucking that's it?
Well, I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty high concept to me.
Dude, what justifies all the porn?
What? You just said the waitress stuff.
Okay, sure, but that's only because I didn't want to keep saying porn the entire video.
Alright, I hear you. So like any fighting game worth its salt, there's a tournament being held. This one being called the VG Tournament in some kind of near future Japan.
Since this came out in 1994, they're probably thinking it's based somewhere around 2001. Don't look it up.
This, of course, is an all-female competition that has its competitors wearing specialized combat-ready waitress uniforms that represent their respective restaurant chains, with the winning waitress earning $10 million, given prime real estate and massive publicity for her employer.
Let me guess. Deep down in the tournament's rules, it somehow dictates that the loser must endure extreme public humiliation rituals of a sexual nature, which is all the hentai scenes.
Well, I mean, like, you're memeing, but yeah, that pretty much nails it.
Ugh, save the kudos. Me guessing that just means I've been in this porn game ecosystem for too long.
There's some other stuff, like about some clandestine bioengineering corporate plot to create super soldiers and other stuff, but I mean, we just made the Street Fighter of a movie video. Besides, nobody really cares about all that other stuff. You know what they're here for.
And that brings us to Advanced Variable Geo. And since all the poon had to be scrubbed out, the overall narrative shifted into a standard melodrama-heavy 90s shonen sports anime. So think Prince of Tennis with titties.
Yeah, the whole subplot of cloning and gaining female fighters' combat data for bioengineering is still there.
Well, I think it's fair to give Advanced a little more credit than that. The story was completely rebuilt. They added actual lore and turned the waitress tournament premise into a legitimate multi-chapter visual novel. I want to put emphasis on that fact because in the original game, all that extra stuff that was happening behind the scenes of the VG tournament absolutely played second fiddle and was barely developed. There wasn't any real plot, just an excuse to see girls sexually humiliated and or abused.
That's not the first time you mentioned that.
Well, I was blindsided. I was expecting just some sophomoric pervert shit, something you'd see from Master Roshi and Dragon Ball, but instead I got blasted by some eyes wide shut bullshit. Clearly I'm not the target audience, but my only experience with porn fighting games up to this point was fucking Jengai Storm, and Geo makes that game look like Blue's Clues.
Hey man, I'm not the target audience either. But to be fair, I've sure to warned you about the eroge hentai shit.
And look man, some people might think I'm being a little dramatic, and that's fair, but some things just aren't meant for everybody. I mean, it's a little awkward when you're playing a fighting game, winning, and that's your reward. But I guess that's the flip side of experiencing all these fighting games for the first time.
Bro, that's just the genre sometimes. One moment you're trying to figure out if this character can shoot a fireball, the other you're wondering why this girl is tied to a plank of wood with a ball gag.
Oh, let's give Team Crossbody a minute to hug it out after they saw a little titty.
Who in the hell was that? Hey, what's up TCB Alpha Males? I'm the Wild Man.
And I'm the Jackal, and welcome to Dude's Corner, sponsored by Spike TV. What's going on?
Did you piss bitches really think YouTube was just going to sit there and let you continue these Fata Tots episodes without giving them the opportunity to peddle sex to kids, while at the same time censoring clearly everybody else?
Well, it's hypocritical, so I guess that makes sense for YouTube.
Glad we have an understanding. Now sit back and enjoy. This won't take long.
Alright, Wild Man. Let's say we take it easy on these guys for our first Dude's Corner and find out which one of these alien looking bitches has the best jiggle.
First up is Ilrin? How do you say this bitch's name? Anyway, it turns out she's dressed as a bunny for a reason.
Bitch got hops, Wild Man. Next up is the commander and tit herself, Yuka. And what she lacks in jiggle, she makes up in sheer value.
I tie that to a block and put a gag in it.
What?
Hey, look at those background bitches.
Whoa! How are those girls not in the DOA games? Because they have hella tiggle wiggle.
Good point, Jackal. I'll buy an aluminum bat and knock each of their teeth out individually. As punishment for a game over, of course.
What? Why does the material of the bat matter?
Well, while they do that, let's move over to the gameplay. There's not a whole lot to the first Advanced VG. Being largely based off a game that was just a bad attempt at Street Fighter and all, the core gameplay is a lot like that. There's the typical mechanics you see in other anime fighters around this time, such as chain combos and even desperation attacks. But everything here is fairly bare compared to a sequel. From the art style to the pacing of the fighting, Advance kind of feels like a strange version of Sailor Moon S, without all the interesting and wacky mechanics. Don't get us wrong, I wouldn't call anything here bad. It's very serviceable, but that's about it. It's just a little dull.
The moment-to-moment gameplay has an awkward rhythm to it. Advance feels like it wants to be an aggressive game, but the overall speed is just so slow. Unlike something like Street Fighter 2, there are forward and back dashes here, but it doesn't really help speed things up any. Despite being 100 times better than any other version of VG before it, Advance still feels incredibly stiff to play. The movement isn't ideal. It isn't anything too unmanageable, but we had an overall hard time trying to place our waitresses where they needed to be during neutral. Speaking of stiff, the combo system and the active cancel out of normal attacks feels inconsistent, with moves just not coming out sometimes. The combo system itself feels as though you could probably get away with some pretty nasty combos if it's pushed hard enough, and it does look like you can link into some pretty wacky stuff. I might have to look into that a little more.
And that's about all there is to AVG1. Issues aside, this is obviously light years better than the horned up crap machine that was the original game, although the gameplay is still pretty lackluster all things considered.
But this was just the first game. The sequel will definitely show how much can be improved when you take all that leftover blood from not adding smut and actually apply it to the gameplay. A big thanks to our TCB members:
Scrub Lords,
Rogue Yoshi, Everybody Super Noob, Death Note 627, Welcome, Jonathan Vanilla 5654.
I'm not worried, Severin, and I don't need your help, or the Brimstone Society's.
Well, good thing I'm fun to have around then.
Yes, it's a very good thing. I expect a number of horrible deaths tonight.
I'm guessing that dress will cause a few of them.
You've been gone a long time, Kagan. I've been taking care of your family for you, though. One at a time, all across the world for 70 years. I think I'm nearly done. What do you think of me now, Father?
While the exact sales numbers of the series are ever lost to time or were never revealed, being a niche 1990s fighting game, I think it's safe to guess that between the first game in the series and its new, more market-friendly advanced sub-series, the risk TGL and Giga took paid off. In between the time of AVG1 and its sequel, the Variable Geo brand expanded considerably.
Between 1994 and 1998, the series experienced its undisputed peak era of mainstream growth. Soon after the release of Advanced Variable Geo for Japanese PCs, a direct follow-up to the original dropped called VG2, The Bout of the Cannibalistic Goddess. Judging by the gameplay, it looked to play just as badly as the first. But hey, at least the name sounds like a Symphony X song. That makes it at least a little cool.
In 1995, Nintendo was blessed with its very own obscure VG game, Super Variable Geo, which is effectively a rebalanced console port of the advanced formula. And if you thought the comparisons to Sailor Moon S were just fleeting regarding the PlayStation version, you could probably fool someone into thinking this was a Sailor Moon fighter, provided they knew nothing about either series. Damn, I wonder how close we came to getting the Variable Geo 64.
The series must have been doing pretty well up to this point, because between 1996 and 1998, the pace really picked up with the release of the PlayStation version of Advanced VG, followed by a Saturn port that following year. Not only that, a 3-part anime OVA was released, with the first entry coming out 7 months after Advance for the PS1, and the final 2 parts following in 1997. These were produced by KSS Incorporated of Wedding Peach fame,
Golden.
okay, Naruto, and other things like Golden Boy,
Golden.
and Battle Angel Alita,
Golden.
but mostly we just wanted to reference Wedding Peach, come on.
All this came to a fever pitch in 1998 with the release of Advanced Variable Geo 2.
Yeah, amazing art!
So, we've established that Advanced VG1 was essentially the dirty version of the franchise, all things considered. Just scrubbed clean enough to be allowed on the console. It was Variable Geo with the lights dimmed and a raincoat on.
Think of it like the transition from the streets to the penthouse in Pretty Women.
Are you seriously comparing a video game full of fighting waitresses to Julia Roberts?
Yeah dude, it all lines up. The first Variable Geo was a street hustling lady of the evening. It was raw, it was desperate, and it was mostly just selling, well, a certain kind of product. But Advanced VG1, that was a shopping montage.
I see where you're going with this, I guess.
Advance 1 was TGL trying to take this hooker with a heart of gold and put her in a polite suit. They gave her etiquette lessons, taught her how to block, and told her, okay, stop grabbing customers, just throw fireballs at them instead. But underneath that borrowed suit, she was still a little clumsy, still a little out of place, and clearly uncomfortable in the high-stakes world of console fighters.
That's disturbingly accurate. So what does that make Advanced VG2?
Advance 2 is the ending of the movie where she's actually comfortable in the red dress. She's not pretending anymore, she's arrived. The developers finally stopped trying to just clean up the smut and actually started focusing on the high society of game design. Better combos, faster movement, and a soul that actually feels like a legitimate fighter rather than just a admittedly better polished version of something that was just pretending to be a fighting game in the first place. Advance 2 is the big mistake, huge moment of the series, where, at least for this small window of time, finally realizes that it can actually stand on its own 2 feet in a blazer as a confident fighting game. But instead of forcing this game's story into the plot of Pretty Women, what's the actual story of Advance 2?
I guess this will be the case of good news, bad news. The good news, the VG tournament at this point is now an official sport. It's taken with the same seriousness as Street Fighter or the King of Fighters.
I guess that means that characters can have more varied motivations of joining, which will make things more interesting now.
Ideally, yeah. If the main character didn't go missing.
No, Yuka, you can keep your clothes on now. Stay.
Surprisingly, it's actually a lot more involved than that. Yuka seems to be suffering from PTSD after the events of the first game. Remember when she had to fight Vol's genetically enhanced Super Tots? Well, she defeated them, but the main antagonist Miranda uncaringly killed her own creations. That alone traumatized her, but Miranda also just casually bodied our main character, jacking up her mental fervor. Feeling defeated and disillusioned, Yuka disappeared and tried to deal with this.
Traumatize me, Captain. No, but seriously, this is actually a pretty cool and compelling way to push Yuka's character. We don't speak the language, obviously, but at least knowing some anime tropes and going through the story cues us into the idea that Yuka's a nice and sweet girl. So I like this direction for what is essentially a Ryu clone. It's at least more compelling than most fighting game pro tags around this time anyway.
This clearly leaves a gap open for the main character slot, and here comes Tameo to fill that spot. She's a 14-year-old junior high school student and Yuka's #1 fan. Inspired by seeing Yuka on TV, Tameo has dedicated herself to training in karate, and has even adopted a fighting style that mimics Yuka's.
Uh-oh, so they're finally pulling that cord on a legit minor, huh? Thank God the advanced games aren't adult.
I mean, that's probably why they did it exactly. But Tameo enters the new VG tournament with a dual purpose: to prove her worth as a fighter and to track down her missing idol. So the narrative for Advanced 2 is a lot more personal. It's about Tameo encountering the rest of the cast and learning the truth about what happened to Yuka along the way.
Aside from the boss characters, Tameo is joined by 2 new additions to the base roster.
Yo, you hear that? Oh, goddamn. Welcome back, Alpha Males, to yet another episode of Dude's Corner.
Another episode? We're not even finished with this one. I'm the Jackal, and he's Wild Man. And we're here to add some much needed hetero to this hetero retrospective.
That's not even a word. If you two don't shut up with your constant interruptions while we trying to save America, we're gonna nail your feet to the floor.
Jesus, okay.
Tell the people why we're here today, Jackal.
Will do, Wild Man. Since we have 3 new baddies added to this roster, we should get to know how these bitches play. Well, that's a little better than the last segment.
Shut up! In order to gather the appropriate information about these thoughts, we're gonna have to quietly watch them in their natural habitat. Here we go. The kitchen!
First up is Kyoko Kirishima to step up and show us what those hands do. And look at that, a perfect fit. She looks like she can handle a couple of sandwich bags, huh, Wild Man?
You think she can make a sandwich while getting her fingernails slowly ripped off by tiny pliers dipped in salt, Jackal?
Dude, you gotta stop talking like that. You're gonna get us kicked off of Spike TV. She does look like a good sandwich maker, but bro, I fucking hate Dude's Corner.
No kidding, let's talk about how AVG2 plays.
Forget everything you know about the original Advanced Variable Geo.
Done.
Because we aren't joking around saying that Advanced 2 is a complete glow up in every way. There's nothing that this game doesn't include that I think the original does better. While it preserves the core heavy focus on neutral, every aspect of playing said neutral was made much more interesting.
One of our biggest problems with AVG1 was the sluggish movement overall. This being improved was instantly noticeable. There's so much more control over the characters. The general controls are just night and day, dude. Normal, special attacks, dashing, jumping, and even blocking all have great weight and speed to them. It's a little hard to communicate since it's so particular to us and what we're exclusively looking for in the fighting game. I think the best way to explain it is that the controls feel very loose without being too unwieldy or uncontrollable. For us, the speed of the gameplay is a perfect mix of being slow enough while still remaining very snappy.
I think this feeling of control is largely due to the ability to jump out of dashes and carry that momentum in the super jumps. You can chain light normals, which stay active for quite a while, directly into heavy attacks, which becomes your bread and butter offensive tactic. But the real game changer here is a slide jump. It's a special technique that lets you perform an extended super jump, covering the entire screen in the blink of an eye. It's perfect for surprise approaches or for escaping a corner. Think of it really as let's say a brain-dead version of sure hopping from the King of Fighters. Most of the cast has access to this near universal neutral skill, and you think that would make a game that's far more chaotic or annoying, especially since the core of it is so grounded, but it doesn't. Instead, combining standard super jumping with these slide jumps creates this strange, fast-paced air footy game. It pushes AVG2 far away from its Street Fighter roots and firmly into anime fighter territory. Hell, going back to Kyoko for a second, since characters can chain air normals on whiff, and her attacks are so fast, she can just super jump around and build meter without ever engaging with the opponent. It's a little cheap, but that's not my problem to figure out. Overall, this gives players genuine freedom to control the pace of the match, which keeps the game from feeling repetitive, even when you're swapping between characters.
Speaking of, after what, like 4 entries, the series finally introduces a meter system in Advance 2. Now the power gauge isn't anything too wacky, but it's very much a welcome addition to the flow of combat. Meter is built relatively fast and will be mostly spent on EX special moves, which only cost 1 bar. Although, due to the amount of flair they get when they're activated, having super flashes and all, EX moves might as well be treated as extra super attacks. With the game dubs as super attacks, only cost 2 bars a meter. When you add that to the fact that the fastest way to build meter is by taking damage, or by Kyoko air spazzing, the power gauge technically becomes your pseudo comeback mechanic.
Characters are able to guard cancel with each of the 4 normal attack buttons, and each button has a unique animation. Some actually have more than 1 guard cancel per button, depending on the situation. But the general rule of thumb here is that if you're guard canceling from a light button, it will result in a normal attack, while using the heavy buttons would do a special attack. All guard cancel attacks are based on your character's existing moveset. That means they aren't guaranteed to have invulnerability, so don't treat them as a get out of jail free card. This was a good choice since you get 2 guard cancels per 1 stock of meter. And with how easy it is to get up and start dragging the bitch, having a get out of jail free card for half meter would cheapen the gameplay. So at least players will have to think and look at their opponent's habits before considering using guard cancels.
And that's the long and short of the gameplay of AVG2. Look, comparatively speaking, nothing about the gameplay here is going to rock your balls off, but compared to what Advance was, which wasn't bad mind you, the glow up here can't be taken for granted.
It's really interesting how this game balances what the original Advance did and expanded on almost every aspect of its core combat, and in such an accurate way too. The additional mechanics added here do everything to help the game, and it's just the right amount. Not one mechanic feels extra or useless.
Well, there are secret moves, which are essentially unique versions of a character's special moves which take the property of the EX version and apply it to the meterless version. They're often very situational, and it's not common for a character to have secret moves that they don't use at all.
Oh yeah, those mostly suck. But outside of those, there's no mechanic added that doesn't feel extra. There's just the right amount included, and none of it gets in the way of player expression or dumbing down the characters. But maybe that's a little unfair. This was made in 1998, not the 2020s. So of course it wasn't designed to automate the fun out of the game. This has probably been the most eye-opening series we've covered so far.
It's been quite a journey, yeah. You've learned way more about adult games than you probably wanted to, and I've got to play one of the generally better games on a Runback. Win-win.
And that's the most shocking thing about the Advanced Variable Geo games.
Well, Advance 1 was okay. It was definitely a step up from the core series, but if it had stopped there, the game would have been quickly forgotten.
But that's the thing. We did get Advance 2, and AVG2 doesn't really have any right to be as good as it is, because it's not just good, it's really, really good.
As far as fighting games are concerned, this has to be one of the biggest glow-ups in the history of the genre. I'd go even far to say that this might be the most underrated fighting game on the PS1.
Sadly, Advance 2 is the absolute peak of the fighting game side of the series. From here, there were 2 more games released in 1999. First was VG Custom, which is a strange mixture of Super Variable Geo with Advanced VG2's graphics and sound. It also reintroduces the humiliation sequences from VG2. Well, they were reused. So not only was the adult content back on the menu, it was reheated porn at that.
The final fighting game in the franchise was VG Max, which was a super deformed pocket fighter style version of Variable Geo with heavily simplified gameplay. After that, the series floated along a couple of years with mainly visual novels before petering out in 2003. And that sucks because AVG2 was good. I don't understand why they stopped, but I guess if you had to die, at least Variable Geo left behind a very pretty corpse.
With that said, let's see where these two fall on our tier list.
Advanced Variable Geo lands in C tier. While it's a much needed improvement from the source material, the actual gameplay, while not offensively bad, is just too basic to stand out in any meaningful way. It sits right in the middle. It's way too solid to be bad, but way too basic to be anything other than average.
Advanced Variable Geo 2 is a strange case when you consider the history of the series. The dev team took what worked in Advance 1 and designed a genuinely amazing fighter. Like we said earlier, the mechanics and ideas it brought aren't going to make you rethink the entire fighting game genre, but within the context of this franchise, they created a fun, expressive, and deep experience that never feels overly complicated or hard to get into. If a game like this were to release today, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that we'd praise it similarly to something like Avatar Legends. To a lesser extent of course, but still. AVG2 has no business being this well designed for what is essentially the final game in a long line of porn-focused fighters. For that, we're giving Advanced Variable Geo 2 our highest tier.
You make me proud.
It isn't a perfect game by any means, and that's not what the You Make Me Proud tier stands for, but by our metrics, it does everything necessary to be an amazing fighter.
But what do you all think about the Advanced Variable Geo series, specifically AVG2? Does it make you proud? Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to like, comment, hype, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Runback.